following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.
Hi, everybody. This is former WWE superstar Al Snow.
CW Anderson.
Sean Oliver.
My name is Eugene.
And you are watching the Insider's Edge podcast.
Now get on the Woo train.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network in conjunction with Blue Wire Hustle. I am your host with the most on the West Coast, California in Fury. Great to be with you all once again here. This show is on fire. This is the biggest and best wrestling podcast in the Southern Hemisphere. And here tonight, I'm very thrilled to have the opportunity to speak to this man right here. He is the one and only, the incomparable Duke The Dumpster Droese. How you going, my friend?
All right, my friend. Thank you very much for having me on your show. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it, sir. And it's just a thrill for me to have the chance to talk to you about your time in wrestling. And the question that we always start the show with, sir, is how did you become a wrestling fan when you were a young man?
As a kid, I was watching wrestling. I grew up. I moved to Miami, Florida, the state of Florida, when I was very young, and they had championship wrestling from Florida back in those days, the 70s and 80s, with Gordon Soley. That's the decades I was a kid, and I watched it religiously every weekend, and I loved it. You know, I loved everything about wrestling. I couldn't get enough of it. And then when WrestleMania 1 came around, that's what really kind of cemented the idea of me becoming a professional wrestler. So,
Right. So you see WrestleMania 1, and that's like, yeah, you're already a fan, but now you're hooked. Now you know that this is what you want to do. It seems to be the same way for a lot of people that were in the business. There was one moment that just made them think, okay, this is what I'll be doing. And I guess you ended up finding a way to, get into the business. You train. Is it true you were trained by a guy by the name of Bobby Wales?
correct. The Jamaican Jammer, Bobby Wales. Matter of fact, he wrestled. Sometimes he would wrestle for Championship Wrestling from Florida in a tag team called the Caribbean Connection, along with a guy named Tyree Pride, the Haitian Sensation. So they would wrestle as tag teams. But he had a ring very close to my house. He had a ring in a warehouse, and he was training guys, and he was very good. I think I wrestled in my first match after probably 6 months of training. He also trained Norman Smiley quite a bit.
Really? Wow.
In Norman's early days. I think Norman was going to a few places, but he would come to our school quite often and wrestle with us as well.
Awesome. That's cool. So yeah, as you mentioned, you wrestled for the first time not long afterward. February 1990, I believe, is the time period we're talking here. How did your first match go?
It was interesting. Tyree Pride got me booked. I was, how old was I? 17, 18, 19, somewhere around there. I was in my teens, but it was AWA after Vern Gagne had sold it to the Savoldis. So it was ICW AWA, and they still had a bunch of the AWA wrestlers from, the Minnesota area, like Nick Bockwinkel and Boris Zukov and Larry Zbyszko. A lot of these guys were still there, and they came down to Florida and did a little loop along with some TV tapings for the Savoldis. And I got to wrestle on that card. I wrestled a guy named Johnny Blaze, who was a local guy that Tyree brought, and they put me over, and I think I wrestled as Mean Mike Casey. That was my first wrestling name.
All right, that's cool. And soon after this, from my research, you do actually portray a character known as, is it just simply Garbage Man? Is that correct?
Well, when I became the Garbage Man, I was in college already, and at the University of Miami, and I had a fraternity brother give me a really cool name that they had thought up called Rocco Gibraltar.
Yeah.
And I tried to think of a gimmick to go with it, and I came up with the Garbage Man finally, and it seemed to work really good, the Garbage Man Rocco Gibraltar. So I started wrestling as the Garbage Man Rocco Gibraltar for a while. Yeah, while I was still finishing up college.
Right. So, how is it that you were first, I guess, discovered, or when does the first time the World Wrestling Federation come into contact with you and show some interest?
Well, I had just graduated from college and I had made a bunch of promo packages of my wrestling work with I cut a promo, I had a highlight reel and a full match on tape, and a resume and pictures. And I made a bunch of them, like 30 of them. I was going to drive around the country and try to get hired somewhere. And before I ended up leaving, they had a convention in my town it was at the Miami Beach Convention Center that year. It was called the NatP Convention, and that's a convention of TV executives basically buying and selling time on their networks and selling shows. And it turned out that Hulk Hogan was there. They were talking about him. He was just switching over to WCW. And they were talking about the steroid scandal in the newspaper. But then they also mentioned that Vince McMahon was there and that he had no comment. And I realized Vince McMahon was in my city. So by the next morning, I had a suit and one of my promo packs. And I had a friend that worked for a local TV station give me his credentials because he was a TV executive. And I walked right in the front door and right up to Vince McMahon and shook his hand and told him I wanted to work for him.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's really being proactive about trying to get hired by one of the big companies. So I guess Vince was impressed with that, and soon after you work your first dark matches for the company on the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of February '94 in Poughkeepsie, New York, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and Lochshiel, New York, against Reno Riggins. How did that go?
It was great. Reno, I wrestled I had 2 nights of tryout matches with Reno, and he made me look like $1,000,000, man. Such a great guy to work with. I still talk to him to this day through social media, but a real great guy, man. And he did me huge favors and made me look great. And every time I talk to him, I tell him I appreciate it because he was responsible for getting me my job there. Um, but it was easy. It was easy. There was more going on. There was more tests going on in the back locker room than there was in the ring. There was one where somebody had told me before I went. They said, "Watch out for this trick they try to play on you." I go, "What do you mean?" They said the first night you'll have a tryout match and they'll put you up first thing, and then the second night they'll tell you you're going to be up first thing, be ready to go. And you'll be standing at the curtain. You'll be standing up there ready to go, and you'll keep getting delayed, and they will put you off for hours, and they'll check your attitude.
Right.
And that's exactly what they did. So I was
Really?
ready for it, and I just kept a good attitude. I didn't say a word. I kept a smile on my face, and they didn't trick me with that one. They still do that to this day, I've heard.
Really? Yeah, I hear like
They'll check your attitude quick.
I hear like sometimes they'll purposely be like, okay, you got 10 minutes. And then once you get out there, the referee will be like, okay, you got 4 minutes. Things like that. So it's funny that the games that they play to test someone's attitude.
I mean, you got to be able to you got to be able to work on your feet and change immediately, especially with the sake of live TV. And either you can do it or you can't. You're either going to sink or swim, and they're going to check and find out before they hire you.
That's it. And I thought it was important to bring up Reno Riggins' name because I like to bring up the names of these guys that help put people over and get them ready, because I think these enhancement guys from back in the day, they are unsung heroes in the wrestling business. And I'm going to list off some of them later on along your way in your journey in the WWF. But I just thought it was important to mention that. After this, you work the one and only Bastion Booger on some house shows, Mike Bell for a taping of WWF Superstars, and a couple of matches with Adam Bomb. But of course, 23rd of May, 94, you debut on Raw against the one and only Barry Horowitz, who you've had on the show in Struthers, Ohio. How did you feel being on live TV all these years? You've been a fan, now you're in the business, now you're on Monday Night Raw.
It was pretty intense. If you let it get to you, it can mess you up. if you get too nervous. But I don't know. There's something about when you're about to go out the curtain, everything changes. Either like I said, either you got it or you don't. And when you walk out the curtain and the lights on those cameras turn on, either you can turn it on or you can't. And I was able to just drop all the any nervousness I had. I didn't think much about where I was. I just went out like I was wrestling a little bingo hall in South Florida somewhere, and just went out and did what I did. I didn't let it kind of get to me, because if you did, it would eat you alive. But Barry was great. I love Barry to death, man. I still talk to him too through social media, and I see him at conventions. But I was warned about Barry Horowitz before the match, and thing about Barry Horowitz and some of those other guys, and I don't blame them. When they're out there with you, if you're green, they'll take a lot of the match and make you look silly. They will get themselves over, even though they're supposed to be putting you over.
Yeah.
And again, I think Barry Horowitz, of all people, deservedly so. I mean, he has such a resume. He had a huge resume before I ever wrestled him. I mean, in Florida and the other places he had worked in. But I didn't let him get away with it. He tries to take over, and I'd stop him because I knew what he was trying to do. Another guy that did that was Mike Sharp, and another one was the Brooklyn Brawler. Those guys, they'd eat you alive if you were inexperienced and you let them. You had to stand up for yourself and not let them just take the whole match.
I understand. That's funny, though. You make your WWF Wrestling Challenge debut against Jumping Joey Maggs. May he rest in peace in Canton, Ohio, the next day. But the next question I wanted to ask was, who did you click with most in the locker room when you first joined the company?
Well, when I first joined the company, I mean, I kind of went around and rode with different people. First, I rode with Doink and Dink and Luna.
Oh, gosh.
Boy, there was a rental car full of people. Woo!
Yeah.
But that did not last long. There was some issues there, and I ended up moving along. And I rode with Adam Baum and Bob Holly some. But they seemed to me they were just like really bitter at the time, and I don't know, it was just really kind of negative feeling when I rode with them. And again, it was understandably so. It was one of those situations where they were just using them. They could have used them a lot better than they were, and later on they would do the same thing to me. So later on I would understand why, but I didn't stay there. I rode with Savio Vega when he was playing quite a bit. Savio is one of the most hilarious human beings on the face of the earth, and we always had fun, and that was still pretty early on when he was Quang. We would ride together a lot. And, sometimes I would bounce around and ride with other people. And later on, it was pretty much when Steve Austin came in, I rode with him quite a bit, and I rode with Bret Hart quite a bit.
Oh, that's cool, man. Awesome. And I love those little stories, little nuggets there. I can imagine Luna, Doink and Dink in the car would be an experience, that's for sure. You get a good push out of the gate. You win your first 34 straight matches before losing to Diesel on August 4th, 94 in Richfield, Ohio. Do you feel like, they were giving you a whole bunch of wins out of the gate to again test your attitude?
Well, I think they do it to build you up and give you some value.
Yeah.
And then it just depends on you which direction they go after that. If you could get yourself over along with what they're doing, they'll continue on the upward thing. But then, if you don't do it necessarily the way they want to or whatever, then they'll start feeding you to some main event heels, which is what they started doing with me. And again, that's part of it. Looking back now, I know that's part of it. I don't remember Diesel being the first person I lost to, though. I remember the first person on TV I lost to that was Bam Bam Bigelow in Wisconsin, Green Bay, Wisconsin. I only wrestled Diesel once, and it was at a house show, and I want to say it was Los Angeles, and he was the Intercontinental Champion at the time, and he had a foot injury, so he can only wrestle about 5 minutes.
Right. So moving forward, you work with Jerry Lawler. You do a bit of an angle with him. How did you like working with Jerry Lawler?
I love working with Jerry Lawler. Jerry's very easy to work with. He's, that old school heat, that Memphis, Tennessee heat. So, before I ever even walked out to the ring, the fans were tuned up and ready to go because he would piss them off so much. As far as the angle goes, I wasn't really happy with how it ended up. We didn't even get to do a pay-per-view match out of it. But I think, there was some. I don't think Pat Patterson necessarily liked me too much. And some of the other agents, I was kind of standoffish with people, but not in a stuck-up way. Some people I didn't know who they were, or I just, at the time I was uncomfortable just running around and saying hello to everybody, I guess, but I didn't even know who Pat was. So I think I had issue with him, and I used to hear that he would talk shit about my matches when I was out there doing the build-up with Jerry Lawler. I'd be wrestling an enhancement guy, and we would do some promo angle with me and Jerry Lawler, and I heard Pat Patterson and even Shawn Michaels were talking down about it at times. But that could also be wrestlers just trying to wind me up. That's kind of how it goes too. So you take it with a grain of salt. But I never really got along with Patterson, so I don't think he certainly didn't push for that angle. And it ended up, we got a Monday Night Raw live out of it with Doink and Dink interfering, and no pay-per-view. And then they moved on, and he wrestled Roddy Piper in King of the Ring instead of me.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Gosh. Yeah. I interviewed Adam Bomb recently, and he would say kind of the same kind of things would happen. They would say something was going to happen, or would look like something was going to happen, and the next thing it's just not on the cards. So what would you say for you? I mean, this is during a time in the World Wrestling Federation where it's a pretty hectic schedule. How would you describe, a typical week for you in the WWF?
You were working most of the week. You'd work the weekend through however many days, and we were probably going 2 or 3 weeks straight, and then come home for a couple days, maybe. That was usually kind of how it worked. 10 days on, 2 days off, or then we go up to like 20 something days, and then 2 or 3 days off, and back on the road, and a lot of us mid card to underneath guys weren't making a lot of money, so it was double rough on us. There was times I wasn't even making enough to live, pay my bills. That's how bad it was then.
Yes, it sounds tough, man. And I'd noticed through my research you continued after this Lawler thing that didn't pan out the way that it probably should have. You continue to get a lot of squash match victories on TV against some legendary enhancement guys like Barry Hardy, Mike Bell, Iron Mike Sharp. You also do some stuff in Europe. So aside from this Lawler thing, was there ever conversations? Did they ever tell you where they plan to go with your character or what you were going to be doing? Or did you just show up at TV and look at who you were against on the board?
Well, for a while we talked about turning me heel, and I was pushing for that. I just wanted to be Duke Droese. I wanted to get rid of the dumpster gimmick and just change my appearance and just be this really strong heel. And Vince kept saying yes, but they just never pulled the trigger on it. I mean, I only wrestled once. One time I wrestled a TV match against Marty Jannetty where I turned heel during the match, and it went really well. The crowd was with it, and then they just, the agent that day was Bill Watts had come in to work briefly in 95, 96.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see me work as a heel. I worked as a heel. It worked well. And then he left a week later because he didn't get along with the clique. So that didn't work. It's just, it's amazing how periphery situations when they change, can change like all the way down the line for people's plans. And it seemed like that put me being a heel on hold for a while. And we came back and we were going to start it again. I was going to, be under Ted DiBiase.
Oh, I
And
see.
I wrestled a match versus Steve Dahl where I beat Steve Dahl. And then I got out of the ring and there was some money in my garbage can. That was just one show we did that. I mean, that was one time we did that, and then we went away from it, and they stopped it again. They didn't do it anymore. I was like,
Wow.
I don't understand why, but
That's frustrating, man. Because for me, like when you're doing something and you want to be creative with it, you want to be doing things that you can sink your teeth into and have fun with, because man, being a wrestler for a lot of people like me, or like just when you're a kid, it sounds like, wow, this looks like it'll be so much fun to be able to portray a character and do all these awesome things. Yet again, another opportunity comes to do something and it's for no reason taken away. So that's disappointing to hear.
but and I've said this before too, and this is true. Then I was clueless. I didn't know a lot of things. Looking back, hindsight being 2020, I could have just kept walking out there and wrestling as a damn heel if I wanted to, especially on live TV. I mean, what the hell were they going to do? I could have made it. I could have got myself over. There's ways to get yourself over and do what you want to do, especially since they had said it already a couple times they were going to turn me heel. I had every right to do it. I wouldn't even have gotten in trouble. So I should have done different things a different way myself. You can't sit back and wait on them to do everything for you because they're not going to. You've got to take charge and get yourself over in so many ways to make it work. And that's why you saw guys like Stone Cold and The Rock.
Yeah.
When they forced change and they came out of what the original shitty gimmick they had,
Yeah,
and they started pushing it, you saw what happened. So yeah, that's the way it worked.
absolutely. They maximized their minutes and it forced the company's hand to do what
Because if you get over, Vince ain't gonna stop it.
Exactly. And
Wow.
it is funny how a lot of people, when they came into the company, always were stuck with some sort of shitty gimmick before they could finally get themselves out of it. But
That's because they had all these shitty gimmicks on a damn on shelves sitting somewhere just waiting for people to come in, and every time somebody new came in, they take like three of them and go, which one of these shitty gimmicks do we want to try and put on this person? And
yeah,
because they were so stuck on their stupid ideas for so long. That's why it was stuck that way. Now, of course, I brought my own shitty gimmick, so it didn't really matter. But but I had a ready-made gimmick I brought in with me, so I was surprised he hadn't thought of it actually.
yeah, it seemed like a lot of guys back then, the characters had a secondary job to their wrestling, which was it's amusing looking back. But I know when I interviewed Adam Bomb, he had joined the company way before Steve Austin did, and they had pitched to him to either be Adam Bomb or the Ringmaster. So that's how long the Ringmaster was sitting on the shelf for those playing at home. That's quite some time.
Yeah, I think they might have pitched me the Ringmaster too. They never called it that though. But when they were talking about turning me heel, they said I was going to be with Ted DiBiase and I was going to be like his protege, like a new and improved $1 million man, Ted DiBiase. So as I look back, I went, that might have been that might have been that gimmick. So and I was by far farthest thing from a damn technical wrestler. I'll tell you right now. I don't think Adam Bomb is either. I think he would admit it. I was not a technical wrestler. I used to just freaking throw people all over the place, and slam them and clothesline them and all that. So I don't think I would have been a good protege to Ted DiBiase, one of the best wrestlers in the history of the game.
Yeah, it is funny just hearing that now. It's like they just keep trying to get this thing on somebody.
They want to stick it on somebody, and that's the way it was.
Oh gosh. As I was doing my research, and it kind of feels like they weren't sure what to do with you for a lot of 1995. You spend from June to September doing only house shows, except one lone TV taping for Superstars in June against Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And I know they're building, I guess they're going to end up building toward some sort of thing between yourself and him. But Do you remember that stretch of time where you weren't being put on television?
Yeah, they were killing me. I really didn't wrestle much at all. I wasn't on many house shows either. I mean, there was a lot of house shows I wasn't on, and when I was on them, they were shitty towns with no money.
Mm.
Um, but the reason I wrestled Triple H is because my contract came up. It was up for renewal, and I was ready to quit. And I refused to work on TV with Steve Austin when he first came in. We still laugh about that, by the way. But I think it was his first match as the ringmaster, and um, out of the blue, they said, "Droese, go get your stuff. We want you to work with him." And at that point, I was just like tired of it. And freaking Bret Hart told me, he said, "I refuse to do it." So I'm like, "Oh man, Bret said that. I should take his advice." Freaking stupid. But I took his advice, and it worked again because my contract was up. That's the only reason it worked. And not that I was some superstar, but they didn't want to lose what the little bit they had invested in me. So, plus, I think Vince knew that I could take the garbage man gimmick with me, just not the name. Anyway, they didn't make me do the job for Steve. I explained to Steve why, and we became great friends after and since. Um, and then that's when they pitched me with the Triple H feud. That was their cure for my unhappiness, was to work with Triple H on a couple matches and the SummerSlam thing. And since I wanted to turn heel, Jim Ross came up with the idea of him cutting my hair as part of the angle, which I had agreed to do. I said, I agree to do it as long as you turn me heel and I get some kind of revenge on him somewhere. But then none of that happened. He cut my hair. We did the match. He hit me in the face with the lid and pinned me, and then I went back to losing any new heel that walked through the front door.
That's so frustrating. So the cure for the whole thing is to actually do something with you and then not follow through with it again. That's it seems quite typical of the company, I must admit.
Yeah, they promised me something just so I would roll over, and then they had me for another year to beat the shit out of me like they did. So it was what it was. I mean, I look back now though, there was a lot of things I could have done differently, and so I can't put it all on them. I mean, look, they do treat people shitty in a lot of instances. Vince, the way Vince will make promises and not keep them, but he's a promoter. That's what promoters do a lot of times. And if you can't handle that, then you shouldn't be in the wrestling business. You've got to be able to take bad news and spin it and turn it into a good for yourself somehow in the wrestling business, or you're not going to last. And I just didn't know how to do that then. I just got angry and went and sulked in a corner somewhere, and that did nothing for me. It was not productive at all. And then they ended up being tired of me pissing and moaning all the time, and they got rid of me.
I understand. So despite the unhappiness that you're feeling with not being utilized to your full potential, you do have that pay-per-view debut against Hunter at the Louisville Gardens for In Your House 6 Rage in the Cage. You've been there a couple years now, but is there still deep within you, are you still thrilled about the opportunity to finally perform on pay-per-view?
I was happy to finally have a singles match on pay-per-view. Up until that point, I'd only been on two others, and they were both Royal Rumbles.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that seemed like the only thing they were going to put me on, and so I finally got on a pay-per-view. It was In Your House, and a singles match somewhere in the middle of the card, I guess. And yeah, I mean I was happy. I just wasn't happy with the finish about it. I thought we could have done it differently because it really didn't make sense to me. Me and Triple H had wrestled a match before that called the Free for All.
Yeah.
And whoever won got to be number 30 in the Rumble, and whoever lost had to be number 1, which is a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Well, he hit me with brass knuckles and knocked me out and pinned me, and it looked like he beat me. But Gorilla Monsoon, the acting president, came out and overturned it and disqualified him. So that was Hunter's first loss in the WWF, was a DQ to me. And the problem I had is when we got to the pay-per-view and did the match, the finish was he hits me in the face with my own lid. And the ref didn't see it, of course. But where was Gorilla Monsoon on that one?
Exactly.
See, that's the kind of shit they would do that makes no sense.
Where were you on that one, Gorilla?
But
Not
I'll
his
tell you
fault.
what I'll tell you what the conversation went like. I told Vince, he goes, "Listen, it's not like we're pushing Mike Droese to the WWF Championship in 6 to 8 months." Now that hurt my feelings. I knew I wasn't being pushed to be the champion, but to hear Vince McMahon say it to you, it's painful. And then he said these infamous words. He said, "Do what you always do. Show up with a smile on your face and do your job." There was nothing I could say. I had no bargaining position. I could quit, which I ended up basically leaving anyway. Briscoe came up and told me to go home after I had bitched so much, but I was already 2 steps out the door anyway. But I figured I was going to do business. I wasn't going to walk out on a match, and so a pay-per-view match that they had been building up. So I went. I did it, and then after that, it just got worse and worse. And I was more pissed off, and I was doing a lot of drugs because I'd hurt my back, and
Okay.
yeah, and I was just irrational. And I was talking to Vince and saying I wasn't. It was like, if you're not going to use me better than this, send me home. That's probably not the smartest thing to say to Vince McMahon. So, I was catching a lot of heat that way, and then they eventually just sent me home. I think he sent Briscoe up to me in the locker room, which to this day I don't even know if Vince really sent it because Vince never said it to me. But Briscoe said you can go. Vince said you can go ahead on home. So I just went home. I went
Right.
home and spiraled out of control for a while.
I understand, and I'll get to that in a bit. I just wanted to kind of list off some things that happened along the way before you ended up leaving the company. So after the feud with Triple H kind of fizzles out, you worked with Steve Austin in '96 on some house shows on the 13th to the 16th of June. And then, of course, you wrestled Mankind on the 24th of June in your last appearance on Monday Night Raw. I read somewhere, and I think this must be incorrect because I think, you left for other reasons, but I read somewhere that you felt burned out on the schedule. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's not true.
No.
We were all burned out on the schedule, but we just, did what we had to do. I was just pissed off the way they were using me, and
Right.
my little ego got the best of me, and I took my ball and went home. But in this case, nobody cared like they did when Austin did it.
And the last thing I was going to mention before I move on from this time period, your final match was against Al Snow, aka Leif Cassidy, on the 7th of July, 1996, in Providence, Rhode Island. And after that, you worked some shows in Maryland, Florida, and New York to round out 1996. But after that, you go to Germany to wrestle for Catch Wrestling. Interviewed PN News, aka Cannonball Grizzly, a little while ago about his experience there. Also, Joe E. Legend and a few other guys. Ice Train as well. He also said he loved his experience there. All I've heard is sterling things about Catch Wrestling, sterling things about Germany. It's my favorite country to visit. How did you feel about your experience there?
I enjoyed it. It was it was one of the last couple years that company would be going. Otto's company was going to shut down within a couple years after that, but because business was down. But it was a fun experience. I had a blast hanging out with those guys and working with guys like Cannonball Grizzly and Christian Eckstein and Fit Finley and Robbie Brooksides and just all of those guys. Pierre was there that year with me. Jean-Pierre Lafitte, he came in the off season and worked there with us too. So it was interesting. It was different. You lived outside of a wrestling building, basically in a camper for 30 to 60 days because you wrestled there 60 days straight every single night. And so you always had to do something different. WWF, everybody had their little match that they would do, and they would just keep doing it. If the next day's show was far enough away, 200 miles or more, they would do the same thing over and
Right.
over and over. You couldn't do that in Germany, man. You had to come up with new stuff every day because you were wrestling in front of the same people for 30 to 60 days straight.
Oh, that's great. That's a good learning experience, I would say. And another thing in my research that I found fascinating, you wrestled in Kenya, December 20th, 1997. I believe you worked with Jim Neidhart. Well, I might be wrong. I think I saw the name Powerhouse Neidhart, so I assumed it was him. But
no, that was a guy
okay.
that claimed to be related to Jim Neidhart, who had a long beard. There was a lot of lookalikes there that did different gimmicks, but that Powerhouse Neidhart guy, he was cool though. I mean, he was from Canada. He said he really was related to Neidhart, but I don't think he was. I just think Neidhart gave him his blessing to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, he kind of acted and worked kind of like Neidhart. That Kenya thing was in between Germany towns. I remember we had to end early in Hanover, Germany. We ended that show maybe like a week early or something. And one of the wrestlers had a opportunity. A guy named Franz Schumann. He set up the week-long tour in Mombasa, Kenya.
Yeah.
And since I was there and I wasn't planning on flying home between the Germany tours, he brought me down with him and just got a little extra payday and went and spent a week in Mombasa, Kenya. So, yeah, we wrestled down there, though. It was interesting.
Yeah. How did you find Kenya? I mean, this to me, I just was so fascinated that it was such a different country for somebody wrestling.
It was hot. It was very hot. I was glad the air conditioner worked in the hotel room. But no, I mean, I didn't go out a whole lot and do much. And interestingly enough, probably within a year after that, they bombed the American embassies there in Kenya. Al Qaeda did, they said. So it wasn't too long after that. So thankfully, we didn't get caught up in any of that.
Yeah, thankfully. So 1998, I found this fascinating too. March 2nd, you do a dark match with Pierre Ouellet and Ouellette, and the 3rd of March against Paul Diamond for some dark matches. What was this all about? Was were the company taking another look at you, or what happened there?
Yeah, what had happened was I wanted to come back to the business, and I had spoken to Bruce Pritchard, and I was also talking to WCW. And somewhere around the same time, I did a dark match at WCW with a guy, but nobody knew my name, so it's on YouTube as just some guy wrestling in a dark match on Nitro or something.
Right.
But WWF made me come and try out again, which I thought was interesting. They made Pierre try out again. They made Paul Diamond try out again.
Oh, I see.
And I don't think they hired any of us back. But it was interesting. When you really do a tryout match, they put you with an enhancement guy. And in this case, they just kind of threw us in there with other guys trying to get a job.
Yeah, that's strange.
So nobody's going to be able to really kind of show their best stuff. And that's just kind of how it worked. It was just the guys in there doing matches and trying to get your stuff in, and it didn't work out. They never called me because they found out about WCW, I think, and vice versa. So I never got any calls because I believe they were very vindictive on both sides.
Right.
Austin told me to choose one. Bret Hart told me to do both. I should have chose one. I should have just went and did WWE's. But again, live and you learn.
Yep, of course. And speaking of getting a phone call, there's a phone call that you get in 2001 to be a part of the Gimmick Battle Royal WrestleMania 17. I mean, I know the run with WWF hasn't gone well as far as you getting used to your full potential, but it must be pretty fun at least. WrestleMania 17 in front of 60 odd thousand people to perform in that battle royal. Tell me a little bit about, getting the call for that and the experience of doing that.
First of all, they didn't call me. I called them. I called
Oh,
Bruce
right.
Pritchard because I was working down in Florida with the company I had worked for before that, the independent down there. It was Sunshine Wrestling Federation. They had just recently bought the name Florida Championship Wrestling. Before later on, Vince would take over the name, but it was FCW. Anyway, I was kind of their trainer, and I owned the ring. But a guy named Bobby Rogers told me, the same guy that told me that they would test your attitude at a tryout. He
Right.
told me they were having the Gimmick Battle Royal, that I needed to call Bruce. So I
Really?
called Bruce, and he got me set up and put on it. But I'll tell you, at that time, man, I was on drugs, a lot of drugs. So I was really in no shape to really wrestle, or it was a great experience, but I really didn't go out of my way to say hi to a lot of people because I was kind of embarrassed at the state I was in. I saw some of my friends and I was glad, but um, otherwise I was just happy to get in and out and get the paycheck, really. But it was amazing walking out in front of 65,000 people.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to, I guess, move on to talking to you about life after wrestling, because it doesn't seem you work too much after this. Maybe you do. My research just said that there was a pretty big gap in time before you do anything with wrestling again. But tell me a little bit about life after wrestling. And you've mentioned that the drug stuff a few times here. It's always good to hear those success stories of people having those issues and coming out on the other side. So please, if you're able to, the floor is yours to tell me about that.
Yeah, after wrestling, I just went into a downward spiral of drugs and alcohol and everything. I was already using a lot of drugs while I was still working there, pills and stuff like that. And when I left, it got worse because I didn't have a wife or any kids at home. So when I would get home from the road, I would keep partying. And now I was staying at home, and there was no matches to get ready for on the road. So I just went completely out of control. And that lasted until I want to say the end of 2002, when everything really fell apart and I didn't have any more money. I couldn't get drugs. I couldn't work anywhere. I was unemployable. And my family flew me up to go to rehab in Tennessee because they had all moved up to Tennessee. I came up, I did rehab and all that, and got clean and decided to get my life back in order from 2003 till about 2009, 2010. I had went back to school, got a master's degree, and became a school teacher for several years. Um, then I had a foot injury, my left foot, and it kind of fell apart. Like the bones were all messed up, and I started taking pills again, and I relapsed. Well, this time it moved really fast, and I got to the point where I became an IV drug user. I was shooting up any pills that I could melt in a spoon. That's how far along it had gotten. I was holding on for dear life to this teaching job. And I relapsed in about 2009, 2010. And this went on until about 2013. In 2013, I was running around out there with people I shouldn't have and doing deals to get pills that I wanted. And I got busted. I got ended up with 2 felony charges on my record, 2 convictions, delivery of Schedule 2 and Schedule 3 narcotics. Um, Basically, I took the drugs that my doctor prescribed me that weren't strong enough, and I would sell them to get money to buy stronger drugs that I could shoot up. And in the process of doing so, I got set up by somebody one of my drug dealers who actually got busted and didn't want to do any time. He set a bunch of us up. So that was the end. And, I lost everything again. The teaching career was gone, coaching career's gone, wrestling was way gone. And I knew something had to change. So I did it differently that time. As part of my plea deal, I took a program called the Drug Court. It's kind of like probation and drug treatment at the same time. It's really strict. They watch every move you make. If you're able to work, they require you to get a job and pay taxes and just be a productive member of society. And they also offer drug treatment. So I went through that program. And again, I was ready. I was done. I was ready to change. So once I got physically clean, I was willing to do whatever it took. And I did well. I passed. I graduated from that program in 2015, and they hired me right away. They wanted me to work, which is where I work now. And I'm a peer case manager, and I also teach recovery classes 4 days a week. And that's what I do now. I try to help people that are struggling with drug problems, and it's a major part of my life. I even have a podcast about it called Road to Recovery.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing that. I didn't realize the places that you've been since all of this happened, and I thank you for sharing. And for me, I just want to say I'm really proud of you. I'm so proud of you that you've come out the other side and you're helping people now. That is just amazing. That's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. They say we're going to one of three places when we're in active addiction. We're going to jails, institution, or death. And by institutions, that means rehabs. But jail, rehab, or death, take your choice. Well, I went to jail and I went to rehab. I don't want to experience the third one, so I knew I had to make a change, and that's what I did. And once I did, my life changed completely. I wasn't living in chaos anymore. And now I just try to teach others how to get to that place.
Absolutely. That's awesome, man. And another thing in my research that I found particularly interesting was 2019. A wrestling company known as Chikara brings you in for a match called the Infinite Gauntlet, where you make a surprise. Chikara always does this. Always bring like guys back from, back in the day for a surprise appearance for something like that. Please tell me a little bit about that experience.
It came out of the blue. Quackenbush, right? Mike
Yes.
Quackenbush, is that the promoter?
Yeah.
Let me tell you something about Mike Quackenbush. I never met him before this, and he had one of his office guys call me to book me for it, and they brought me in. And from the moment I walked in the door, watching Mike Quackenbush run his company was one of the most amazing things I'd ever seen. I mean, it was a smaller level company compared, obviously, to like a WWE, but he was on top of everything. One of the most, I still say it to this day, one of the most organized, well-run companies from top to bottom I've ever seen. And I really enjoyed doing that show. It's interesting because I really had not been wrestling because that left foot injury I told you about earlier ended up, I had 2 surgeries. I was on a lot of drugs and not doing what I was supposed to. And then I got a staph infection. So I had to have my left foot amputated.
Oh,
so I've got a prosthetic foot. So I really didn't think I'd be wrestling anymore. And, a couple promoters kind of got me back in the ring and doing stuff. And he had me come out and smash somebody over the head. Then I did a couple of little moves in the ring, and then somebody submitted me, and I got the hell out of there. And he got me right back to the airport and on the plane same day back home. So very organized. I loved the way he ran that show, and all of his wrestlers were great guys and girls. And it was a pleasure to work there.
No, I'm happy to hear that, bro. That's really cool.
And I can mark it off the bucket list.
Absolutely.
Chikara. Yes.
That's fantastic, mate. Well, I wanted at this stage to give you the opportunity to plug anything. You've mentioned your podcast. What else is going on in the life of Duke the Dumpster?
A large part of what I'm doing, in recovery is the podcast. It's called The Road to Recovery with Duke the Dumpster and Avi Klein, and it's on Facebook Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern time. Now, it's on Facebook Live on my Facebook page, Mike Droese. It's on Avi Klein's Facebook page. It's also on all of our other podcasters' Facebook pages. And when I say other podcasters, on our team, we've also got Ken Patera, Paul Roma, Del Wilkes, the Patriot, Ray Lloyd Glacier, and Bill DeMott, Hugh Morris, as part of our team. And Mark Henry is going to be starting in the next week or two with us. So we got a nice team of people with different podcasts going on all week long, every night, live. And it's culminated every Saturday night with a show called The Green Room. And they're all live broadcasts through Facebook right now. And it's been very entertaining. But my little corner of this network is The Road to Recovery, where we talk to people and have conversations every week with folks that have been through tough times and found a way out of it, whether it be drugs and alcohol or substance abuse or other situations in life, abusive relationships, or came out of child abuse when they were kids, or just had tough issues in their lives and found redemption. That's a big part of my podcast. Plus, we act stupid and goofy by the end of it and play games and have a good time. So it's very, very entertaining. And it's called The Road to Recovery with Duke the Dumpster Droese on Facebook, Mike Droese's Facebook page, all of our other podcasters' Facebook pages, as well as 39 other pages that broadcast all of our shows for us. So we're getting about 1 million live views per night per show, which is really awesome.
That's amazing. And everyone out there watching this on YouTube, right there in the description below this video, you'll be able to find everything that Mr. Droese has just mentioned. That sounds awesome. I can't wait to check some of that out. But Mike, at this time, it's time for the segment 5 Second Frenzy. 5 Second Frenzy. You get 5 seconds to answer each question. Even if you break the 5 seconds, it's okay. You won't get in trouble. Here we go. Duke the Dumpster Droese, Mike Droese. First question: who was your favorite wrestler?
My favorite wrestler growing up, I idolized the Road Warriors because that's what I wanted to be, and Ric Flair because in the 80s, there was nobody better than Ric Flair.
Absolutely. Who was your favorite opponent over the years?
I had a lot of favorite opponents. Again, I used to love wrestling with Savio a lot because we always laughed and had a good time. I loved the chances I had to wrestle with Steve Austin. And of course, Triple H, that whole feud, we wrestled a lot. And he was always very professional and willing to do whatever. So those are a few of the names that I really loved working with.
Excellent. You look back in your career, you got to pick one match. What's one match where you felt to yourself, wow, that felt good. That's probably going to go down as my favorite.
Sometimes I say it's my favorite, but man, it's the strangest thing. I had a house show match, and he knows I say this, with the Hog Farmer in the Philippines, I think it was. I think it was the Philippines. It was a house show, and it was just one of those matches. Man, it was magical the way everything came together for both of us, and the crowd was into it, and it was perfect. And I wish I could have had a match like that every single time I ever wrestled. And I loved working with Henry Godwin, Mark Canterbury.
Awesome. I'm hopeful to get him on the show very soon, so I'll ask him about that when I have the opportunity.
He probably won't even remember it, but I remembered it. I put him over. After that, I begged Vince to let me do a feud with him, but he wouldn't let me.
Damn. Getting away from wrestling now, finally, here on 5 Second Frenzy. Mike, what's your favorite book?
Oh, gosh, my favorite book. Man. You know what? I haven't read it in a long time, but a John Sanford book called Rules of Prey. John Sanford has this series of books about serial killers, and it's just really interesting. And it's all about this investigator named Davenport that chases down different types of serial killers. But the first one I read of his series was the one right in the middle, I think, called Rules of Prey. And all of his books are just really cool. John Sanford, he's the author.
Excellent. What's your favorite TV show?
Man, I really don't watch TV much. I've got the internet stuff, so I got like the Netflix and the Amazon. But right now, I'm working my way through The Boys about the superhero company. But that's
Nice.
it. That's pretty much all I'm watching. Or otherwise, some movies here and there. But
Yeah. Do you have a favorite film?
I'd have to go back to some of the old ones that I really used to love. The Godfather,
Yeah.
um, The Deer Hunter, Pulp Fiction was always a favorite of mine. So yeah, those are a few that I would
Very
put up
nice.
there.
Very nice. Favorite musical artist?
You know what, man? For Alice in Chains, like
Oh, right.
back with Lane Staley though, back
Yeah.
the old stuff. I
Yeah.
used to really like the Chili Peppers. Then they kind of just went too commercial. But imagine if Lane Staley was healthy and lived, and the stuff they would have put out, it was just amazing. So yeah, it was
Absolutely.
Alice in Chains.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. Favorite food?
Pizza, without a
Nice.
doubt.
We get that
I
on the
eat way
show
too
quite
much
a
of it.
lot. Favorite place to eat on the road?
Well, I can tell you most frequent is Waffle House or
Yeah.
Denny's,
Yeah.
but anytime we can find a good steakhouse, back in those days we were trying to save money, but if you can find a good, like an Outback Steakhouse or something like that, that's always good too. But yeah,
Yeah.
those kind of places.
You hit three of the most popular answers. Cracker Barrel's also a popular answer with that one.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike Drosie's thirsty. What's your favorite beverage? What's something that you go to quench your thirst?
Ugh, I have an addiction to Diet Pepsi. It's killing me. It's either Diet Pepsi or it's water. So yeah, those are the things that I drink.
Very nice. The second last one here, Mike, on 5 Second Frenzy. It's the naughtiest one. What's
Oh
your
gosh.
favorite female body part? You look at a lady, what's something that Mike Drosie likes?
You know, I was a bouncer in strip clubs for a long time, and I'm going to tell you, there's this right above the butt in the lower back. There's these two dimples in the lower back, and I do not know why, but just that curve down the back into the rear end, man, that always got me. So that's my favorite part.
Even before you said it, I knew that you were going to say the two dimples. I knew it. I don't know why. I knew where you're going. And Mike, the last one. I don't think you've sworn yet on this show, but do you have a favorite curse word?
Fuck.
Again, the most popular answer on the show.
Yeah, easily.
Well, Mike, aka Duke the Dumpster Droese, it was so fun having the opportunity to talk to you tonight. Really appreciate it. Some of the stories you told, like your bed, your soul, you let everyone know exactly what happened in your life. And I just want you to know that I live in the most isolated city in the world, Perth, Western Australia, and I was a fan of yours. So I think it's always important to show the reach that somebody has and to let them know that somebody all the way over here appreciated what they did in the wrestling business. And I hope you're very proud of what you've accomplished in life.
Well, I certainly am a little more today after hearing you say that, and I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir. And thank you again for being on the show.
It's been great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, everyone out there, for watching the Insider's Edge podcast here on the WZWA Network in conjunction with Blue Wire Hustle. I'm your host with the most on the West Coast, California and Fury. We will see you next time. Thank you.